Hello and welcome to episode 21 of the Peterpodcast. I'm your host, reporter Taylor Clydesdale. With me this week is Mike Lacey, and our special guest this week is mayoral candidate for the city of Peterborough, Diane Therrien. Diane will be running in the fall election to take the spot away from Daryl Bennett. And today we're going to be talking about the housing market and what her plans are for that.
There's always going to be people that want to have that, like the suburban home with the lawn and for their family, whatever. That's not going to go away. We know that. But there are increasingly a lot of people, younger people, or the retirees who don't want to have to deal with like having a lawn and clearing snow and all that kind of stuff. So there are innovative ways of building housing that we need to look at.
And we're also going to be talking about the future of the Parkway and what Diane Therrien as mayor would do about PDI. So, hope you enjoy the show.
My name is Diane Therrien. I am a city councillor for Town Ward currently and a mayoral candidate. And I am in your office right now because you are doing a series of Peter podcasts with candidates and about other issues as well. So you asked me to be here, and I'm happy to be here.
You and Brock Grills are really selling our podcast.
Yeah.
Both of you have been like, oh man, the Peter podcast, you're doing a series, it's great. And I mean, you haven't pitched nearly as hard as you should.
Yeah, I mean, it's early though.
Give it time.
Yeah.
That is true. We only just finished a provincial election. Yeah. So.
Well, we're only 20 seconds into this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got 30-40 minutes to go. We could make you a believer by the end.
Yeah.
So you're running for the position of mayor. So
Yes.
Why don't you describe a little bit about why you decided to do that?
Sure. So I've been on council for 4 years, as you know, and seen a lot in that time and have really enjoyed it, and have talked to a lot of people and have had people encourage me or ask me to run. And I thought about it a lot. It would have been a lot easier just to run for council again and do that. But I believe really strongly in our community, and I feel that we're at this critical moment in our community where we can push things forward and do things in a really new and interesting and innovative way. And I want to be a part of that, and I know that I can bring that to the table. And so, I considered it for a long time and got advice from a bunch of people, and it was like, you know what, now's the time. 4 years is a long time to wait when you feel like the leadership that you have isn't necessarily what you're looking for in a city.
I'm wondering, because I know we're going to get into specific issues.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time when you're mayor or councillor, a lot of issues come up that you didn't even plan for. And I'm just wondering what your vision is for 4, 8, even 12, 16 years down the road. Yeah, well, like the Peterborough you want to see.
Yeah, and so when I make decisions, I always think about not like even further than that. Like we need to plan for the future in a long-term sense. And there was this really great quote on Twitter that I saw, which was, your child born today is likely to see the year 2100. And so we need to be planning for that. And I have a little nephew, 6 months. And so I want to know that we're building a city and a community that is going to be good for him and for all of our, children in 2100, which seems really far away, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. And so that, ties into more sustainability, more localization of the economy, and figuring out our transit system and active transportation and housing in new and interesting ways, because we have, as we're going to get into, a housing crisis and a poverty issue and all these kinds of things. So it is a broad sort of vision. And in my announcement speech, I talked about the 3 pillars around jobs, taxes, and infrastructure. Because those are the key pillars upon which you build a community, and you need to do that in a way that is planning for not just 10 years, and in politics so often it's planning for the next election cycle, which is really unfortunate in a lot of ways. And
one of the reasons they moved, because it used to be 3 years, and they moved it to 4 years because really a councillor only had about 2 years, and then they were worried about re-election.
And then it's also like when you come in and you're new, you have a lot to learn, so you spend the first year kind of learning about everything.
A year really of being able to do anything
for sure. And then governments tend to move slowly, so it sometimes takes a couple terms to get those big things through and affect those changes. Or
in the case of the Parkway, it takes many
it takes decades. It takes centuries. It's which and that's true. And so, I have and I'm doing this series of community drop-ins and conversations to also hear from people what they're looking for, because I'm not going in assuming I know all the answers. I know what I would like to see, but I also realize that there's different different neighborhoods have different specific issues. But having done these for a month or so now, there are the recurring themes around the economy, employment, safe neighborhoods, good roads, like those kinds of things, which we knew going in. But I try to learn as much as I can to help flesh out my platform, the full platform, which will be released later in the summer.
So let's talk a little bit about your experience on council, because you've been on council for 4 years now.
Yeah.
And what are some of the kind of highlight moments, but also what are some of the challenges that you've faced on council?
Yeah, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. It's, there are times where, like any job, it can be frustrating. There's been a lot of highlight moments. There's those little things that, the thing about municipal government, which I love, is that it's so tied to your day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. And so an example that I talk about sometimes is there's a relatively new 9-hole disc golf course in Hamilton Park. I don't know if you're familiar with it, at the entrance to Jackson Park off of Bonaccord Street. There's a little, They put in this new 9-hole golf course, and there was this lady that contacted me saying that she started this senior ladies disc golf league every Monday night, and they were wondering if it was possible to get a porta potty there, because they didn't want to have to take 10 minutes out to go worry about having to find a porta potty. And so worked with the parks department and all this, and managed to get a porta potty in there, and got the most ecstatic voicemail from her. The ladies were so happy today when we got there, and there was a porta potty, and it's just it's such a small thing, but it made the park more enjoyable for all those ladies. But then everybody there's a little playground there as well, and it's a really high used area of the park. So when you got your small kids, you don't need to worry about nobody needs to worry about it. So stuff like that makes it really, it makes it real, because you're helping people have a better experience in their community day to day.
You might be the first politician that I've ever talked to who has said that the highlight of my career has been toilets.
There are little examples like that of how municipal government impacts people's lives. And then, bigger sort of higher level things around. So I see on your list, we're going to talk about PDI. But when that was in front of council, and I pushed for having a proper sort of public consultation and engagement process, which that motion passed. And so we went through that, and it was a good, and certainly there were things out of that could have been improved, but it was a good sort of starting point for how I'd like to see politics done more. And it's part of why I like to do these neighborhood drop-ins, and if elected would continue to do that, because I think as elected officials, we should be accessible to people and be able to just sit down at a coffee shop and have people come and air their grievances or talk about what they like or what they don't and what they want to see and how they feel. I think that's really important.
And I know some councillors, Dean Pappas attempted with those kind of town hall meetings to kind of have that transparent sit down and talk function with the people. And part of me, as the dubious journalist, is those are the types of things that pop up around election time. But what are the continued and sustained efforts that you would make if elected mayor to continue to sit down with people and engage with people all year round?
Yeah, I think having consistent sort of open house hours or having neighborhood drop-ins is really important. Dean and I have done neighborhood barbecues for the last 4 years in the summer, and have done some in the off season, but they're not as exciting as coming out to a park and be able to bring your family and have something for your kids to do.
So I'm just gonna move that slightly.
Yeah, and so I think that's definitely part of it, and it's you have to go to where people are, and that's something that I strongly believe in. And so I also I look for advice on where people think is the best or the best times, because we've been doing these drop-ins right now from 1 till 3. And we've had some people say, well, a lot of us have worked the sort of traditional 9-to-5 job. Yeah. It's okay, so later in the summer, we're going to start doing some in the evening. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always open to feedback about what is what works best for people.
I've often wondered, because when you look at, municipal politics, people are extremely passionate about.
Yeah.
Interested, care, really involved, but it's still only 40 to 50% of voters. How do you get the other 50 to 60% of people involved?
Sure, yeah.
How do you reach them?
Yeah, part of it is just knocking on doors. When I campaigned last time, I had people say, don't bother going to XY Street because people there don't vote. They're low turnout polls. But But I would go and knock on those doors, and people would say nobody's knocked on our door before.
Yeah.
And then, I live in those neighborhoods now, and I'll be walking my dogs, and people are like, "Hey, we remember you knocked on our door last time. We voted for you." So it's really just about engaging with people, and making people feel heard and know that they're being listened to and valued, because there's a lot of marginalized people, low income people, a lot of times tend to get sort of, well, we're not going to campaign there.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, you need to. They just they're not voting because they've never had anybody to vote for.
Yeah.
Like, oftentimes too, those are the type of people who are the most affected by municipal politics.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I was talking to a gentleman this morning, and I don't know if this story will be out by the time this podcast comes up, but I was talking to a gentleman this morning outside where the Brock Mission is currently located at St. Paul's, and he was saying that, for him, the housing crisis is really affecting the people like him who can only afford this much, but then everything's this much, and the stuff that he can afford are places that are either falling apart, filled with bed bugs, or they're in an environment where it's not safe because there's drugs being sold out of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it impact, and again, like, there's several things that I love about municipal politics, partly that it's not party politics, but also because it's so tangible. It's like those day-to-day things that impact people's lives. It's not sort of that high-level policy that, it is stuff like that, like streets and housing and parks and stuff that people see every day. And I think part of why there's low voter turnout too is people don't always realize that, because when I was door knocking as well, I remember several conversations with people who were like, oh, we don't vote, like municipal politics, whatever. But then we started talking about the sidewalk or something. They were like, oh, that's the municipal government's responsibility? We're like, yeah. And they're like, oh, okay. And so it's like connecting those dots, right? And so I think there needs to be more outreach into that, certainly, and particularly education among young people in high schools and elementary schools, going out there and letting them know what their municipal government's doing, what it's all about, because you want to get them when they're young. Because if you don't vote in your first few elections, it's likely that you'll never vote. Yeah. So you want to get the young kids to be able to be paying attention to politics.
What do you want to talk? You have a whole list.
No, I thought there was something you wanted to say.
No, I don't have anything right now.
Okay.
He's just supervising.
But
I'm just seeing what time we.
Okay. So just in regards to you as mayor, I mean, we've talked a little bit about your experience, but what makes you qualified to be the mayor of Peterborough? Because that's a job with a lot of responsibility. That's a job with you're overseeing a lot of different things. What are the bullet points that you would kind of list off as being like, here's what would make me a good person for that leadership position?
Yeah, sure. So as you know, I've been on council for 4 years and have not been afraid to speak out on issues that I believe in. Outside of council, I have experience in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors, overseeing budget, overseeing staff, overseeing all of those things, and more than that, like I'm passionate about this community, and I know that I can do the job, and I want the community to be part of that as well, which is something that I believe in, as you guys know, because I talk about it all the time, in a more sort of collaborative and positive leadership approach, where what I'm hearing at the doors is people are tired of the 6-5 voting blocks, like they're tired of the animosity. It turns people off, right? And we live in a really tumultuous political climate where there's so much, at higher levels of government and internationally, there's so much of that going on. And it would be great to see more just collaboration and working together. You don't have to agree on everything. Like, I don't agree, even with, I get lumped into like the 5 of the 6-5, but I don't vote with those guys on everything. Yeah. Like I vote with the mayor on a lot of things. It's not, because
nobody sees those votes.
No, yeah, well, and that's the thing, because they're not those big, like.
Well, the other ones are more philosophical votes.
Yeah, right? Like, for sure.
You guys have philosophical differences.
Yeah, on what, belongs to the public and what, what priorities should be and how the city should develop and all of that. But it's, but that's, I work really hard to get along with all my colleagues on council, like, because they're colleagues. Like, you come to a workplace and you work with everyone, and that's just the kind of person I am. So it also gets painted as, I think, more divisive than it is. These votes make it, and certainly comes across that way. But we all, hang out and talk, and I get along with everybody. Do you think? But I think it can be done better.
Do you think is that a reflection though of the community itself? Because the community itself is somewhat divided on
for sure
where it wants to be in 10, 15, 100 years from now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is. I mean, in any community, you're going to have differences of opinion and how we should develop and how we should go forward and all of that kind of stuff. And so, again, part of what I've said is, and why I'm doing these drop-ins and trying to hear from people is that I have a vision of what I would like to see, but I don't like automatically exclude anybody else's opinion. So I'm happy to talk to people and learn, like people that are, pro Parkway. Okay, well, that's fine. What is the common ground? Because I'm the kind of person that would try to find the common ground. So, okay, you are concerned to see like a better arena or a better park space. Okay, cool. So am I. Let's talk about that. Because I also don't really believe in running those like one issue campaigns because the city is complex and there's so much going on.
Yeah. And I know just on certain issues that you're right. It's not that there's two camps on council and they always kind of vote their own way and there's no crossover at all. Because certainly, everyone's kind of tagged along in certain ventures or certain people vote certain ways regardless of where they stand politically sometimes. But then there are times also where here's the group at council that hang out in the coat room, and here's the group at council that hang out in the mayor's office, and these are the things they're saying, and these are the things they're saying, and then they get together in council chambers, and you can kind of feel that visual and verbal, here are the two sides to things. So, if you were to be elected mayor, would we see 4 more years of that kind of two-sided tension on council?
I would hope not. I mean, what I would do, it would be to have sort of a strategic retreat at the beginning of the term.
The good old days.
Yeah, just that, like...
They used to do that.
And I've heard that. They used to do that, and it hasn't happened, and we've asked about it, and it hasn't happened. To get to know people outside of those walls, and also, okay, well, what is your ward's priorities, and where can we find this common ground?
Yeah.
And
we'll come up as a group with...
Exactly.
Here's what we want to really focus on.
Here's what we want to focus on, so you can actually get stuff done.
So would that include here's what we agree on at the very beginning? Like here are the things that we all are on board with?
Yeah, because then you have a bit of a roadmap of where you want to go. In the city, there's all these different plans that the city has, including a sort of a strategic plan around what the areas of focus are. But council doesn't really have that. And so I think it's really important to do that. I mean, organizations do that. It doesn't matter what sector you're in, that kind of stuff happens, and you have that roadmap to where you're trying to go. And so right now, that's not happening. It hasn't happened, and so I would love to do that. I think it would be great, beneficial for everyone.
Sounds like to me that's not something that needs to happen just at the beginning. That's something that probably would need to happen throughout the lifetime of that term. The only problem is I could see some people saying that you're having closed door meetings and coordinating outside the public space and the public record. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good to do sort of like those ongoing check-ins and have, you could have a clerk there. And I don't know how you'd get around that perception around the closed door meetings, but maybe it is, again, just like a check-in on the strategic plan and where we've made progress or where we still need to go. So there are ways to do that. Like there's always examples out there in other municipalities who are further ahead than we are on this kind of stuff. So it's not like we need to be the pilot project. There are great things happening all across the country where we can, and North America and Europe and everywhere in the world. So we can take note from that as well and learn how to function better as a council and as a city.
Okay. So I think we've been taking it easy on you right now.
Okay.
So we're going to take a break. And then we're going to come back.
And it's going to get tough.
We're going to come back a little bit more hydrated in this hot weather.
Okay.
And then we're going to start dealing with some of the issues that Peterborough is facing.
Sure.
So we will be right back.
Sounds good.
All right. So we are back. We are going to be talking about a whole whack of issues that are things that Peterborough are dealing with right now. And let's go ahead and start with the Parkway and your stance on the Parkway. Obviously, you've been vocal on council about the Parkway before. Mm-hmm. It's something that you've voted on numerous times during your 4 years.
Yeah.
But why don't you, for people who are Diane Therrien newbies,
sure,
explain what your stance is on the Parkway.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been opposed to the Parkway since I've been on council. It's been around longer than I've been alive. So, it's like if they had just built it 50 years ago, we wouldn't be in this situation. Yeah. But I mean, the cost for it, there's several components to it that are problematic for me. The cost, which goes up, like the estimates back when it came to council in 2012 or 13, where it was, $80 million. Like that would be close to double by now, probably.
It goes up every year.
Every year it goes up. As we know, cost of gas, cost of everything goes up every year, labor, all that stuff. So, there's the environmental part, there's the cost part. And I just think since that has been being talked about, there's been so little done to actually alleviate the traffic problems that people are concerned about. Because people are legitimately concerned about cut-through traffic on residential streets, speeding, traffic.
Have you seen the amount of traffic that goes down Fairbarn Street, which is the shortcut around?
My parents live in the North End, and I go up. My mom and I go up to the Good Life up there often, and so I know, I see it, I drive it, I see it, and part of it is that there was some questionable planning decisions made back in the day to build all these new houses without the proper infrastructure for it.
Well. That gets back to the parkway, though, right? Because technically it's on the books, so that's what you have to work off of, right? So I guess the question is, what do you got to replace it with something?
Yeah,
if you don't build it. So
I would like to, Chemong Road and Councillor Beamer brought forward a motion about looking into doing that, which is, as I'm sure that you guys know, is also a disaster. Mm-hmm. Five laning that so that you have proper turning lanes, because that. There's still business on there, so not all that traffic's going to be diverted on the parkway. People are still going to be on Chemong.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that, and then in terms of the traffic that is using the parkway to get around or through the city, a lot of it which comes from out in the county, I would prefer to see a ring road around on Lily Lake, Atkinson, Brayley. That would require, because we're putting in this Lily Lake subdivision's been approved. Again, one of the things that we've approved, but it comes out onto this, county road that's 50 kilometers an hour. Like that's not in great shape, doesn't have shoulders or bike lanes or anything like that. So to me, that's the kind of thing when I'm talking about these planning decisions where it's like, if we want to approve that, sure, but we need to say we're working with the county to upgrade this road to a proper arterial road standard to get traffic out from there. Because a lot of the people too that I know, that I've heard and talked to, that are moving to these kind of things, there's a lot of sort of what I call GTA expats who are like recent retirees who are coming here. But there's also a lot of people that are younger families from Toronto area, Durham region, who are moving here because the housing prices are even higher than they are here, who are then still commuting down to the 150. Yeah. So if they're going to go there, then send them out, help them get out to the 7 or whatever and down on the Lily Lake Road is what I would like to see.
It is very true that if you build it, they will come. And if you build any kind of housing in this city, it will sell in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're building hundreds of homes out in Millbrook and Norwood. Yep. And these are, if they put 100 homes up for sale in a weekend, they'll be gone by Saturday night. So you're right. We do have a lot of people who are coming into the community, and there's really no solution right now for connecting that Lily Lake Road subdivision with the rest of Peterborough in a way that's not going to put pressure on roads that really are not meant for hundreds of people to be driving and walking. Yeah, for sure.
And people speeding, and it's like, so your kids can't just go play hockey in the road like they would have been able to back, a couple decades ago. So that's a problem, and I get it. I totally get it. There are also, in the interim, while we're figuring that out, turn restrictions, one way sort of during, they have like turn restrictions on specific hours, or no right turn off of Fairburn onto Bellevue or something to prevent people from just scooting down that way. So there are different ways to try to alleviate that in the interim while we figure out the bigger sort of network solution.
Well, how many years off is the Lily Lake Road subdivision from the first phase being done and people starting to move in?
Well, they're moving stuff, they're moving the dirt around out there, so it'll be, I think, within the next couple of years, next year or two.
Okay.
Do you think Peterborough's ready because the 407, it's partly the 407, it's partly housing prices in Durham.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to be moving here. Yep. We're trying to move here. Do you think as a community we're ready for it?
No.
It's a good, simple answer.
Yeah, I don't mean physically, even collectively as a group. I don't.
Infrastructurally?
Well, no, there's that, but then there's also the psyche of Peterborough. I don't think people realize that.
Yeah, well,
that people are coming here from Durham and the GTA
I mean, I see it. It's interesting because I see it a little bit like, so for where my parents retired here from Mississauga. They lived there for 30 plus years, and they live in the North End now in a neighborhood where there are a lot of younger families, some of them from the Peterborough area, but they also have a lot of neighbors that are other, like I said, GTA expats. And so I think there is a bit like, we don't want to see sort of that like divide, you know, but it's like a lot of those people, like my mom is working here now, and there's a lot of people like these young retirees who are then getting involved in, you know, volunteering and helping out, and so wanting to be part of the community. So yeah, it's interesting, but I think in terms of the infrastructure, like coming from anywhere else, like our transit system is so outdated. Like we need to move away from the hub system. It's, you know, it's just
get traffic decentralized from the downtown.
Like, you know, as much as I love the downtown, like
everything doesn't have to
come. I talked to people in the North End who were like, I would love to take the bus to work in the South End, but it would take them like 2 hours. And nobody's going to do that because, you know, but if you have sort of a more grid system and they can do it in 30 minutes, they can read whatever, then that makes it accessible, and it makes it worth their time. So there, you know, there's all kinds of things that we do need to catch up on, and so we'll see what happens. That 407 thing is talked about a lot.
It makes it a lot more convenient for people to commute to work in the GTA.
And I mean Bowmanville, you know, they're getting their GO station soon, and they're booming too. All the Durham region is booming. So, and it's also about working with those regional partners. I've met with the mayor of Clarington and talked to some of the councillors down in that area too about how, like, economically, how we can work together. Because again, there's a lot of residents here that work down there. So we want to have that community for sure.
It's just so much cheaper.
It's just, to
live here.
And and that's still going up and up and up.
Just in regards to, I want to go back to the ring road solution, or, you know, as it plays into as part of many different solutions, because as you mentioned, you know, improving transit is one part of that solution as well. But I've never been completely sold on the idea that, you know, building a ring road around Peterborough would help in the same way that building sections or even building the complete parkway would. I don't 100% buy that people would, you know, go to the outskirts of the city and then skirt around the traffic in this ring road, as opposed to just bearing down Lansdowne Street and then bearing up George.
Well, no, they do, because I have friends that live in East City, and they'll go out to the 115 and down to get to places on, like, near Costco or down near Fleming. So they will do that. And, you know, the 115 to TV Road is our ring road on the southeast side. So I think it would, because if you're living in those areas, and if you're living at the Little Lake subdivision or in that sort of in the North End, you've got really the only big box store that you don't have up there is Costco. So you go down for that, but you've got your Walmart, Canadian Tire, like your grocery stores, all that kind of stuff. So there's no need for you to come down to Lansdowne when everything you need is on Chemong Road. And so a lot of that traffic too is people that are traveling through from out in the county.
Well, that brings into mind the question of subdivision building in general, and that as a housing solution, because, you know, a lot of people don't like the fact that you've got these big subdivisions like the Lily Lake Road one, where if you want to do anything, if you want to go out and get drinks with friends, if you want to go grocery shopping, you have to drive out of there, and they don't find that the suburban design philosophy is conducive to community building or reducing gas and gas usage in cars on the road.
It's true. And I mean, I did not vote in favor of the Little Lake subdivision. The developers, to their credit, did take a lot of the feedback, and they incorporated to try to make it a bit more dense and put in connecting trails to the Jackson Park trail system. So they have done a lot, and put in a little sort of commercial plaza so that you could at least walk to the store and buy milk. But you're right, and I think more and more as we're dealing with issues around climate change and sustainability, we are realizing that kind of development isn't sustainable in the long term, and we know that building that kind of development costs much more in the long term to maintain than it does to do infill or do adaptive reuse or build on areas that are already serviced by our sewer line or roadway or transit line, or, you know, all that kind of stuff. Because when you have these new subdivisions, then you're paying more for the snow clearance, the garbage collection, the road maintenance, all that kind of stuff. It just costs more. So Mississauga had notoriously low development charges for a long time, and in the last couple of years, they've realized they needed to increase, and they doubled them. They just doubled all their development charges because they realized they were paying out now more than they were making from the property taxes to maintain that.
So just in regards to infilling, just a quick second that we have before we need to move on to the next topic. We don't know what's going to happen yet to the Places to Grow Act with the Doug Ford government in power right now. But even if the Places to Grow Act does get scrapped or changed in a certain way, so that it doesn't prioritize infilling and building upward in core areas as much, what would your philosophy as mayor be in regards to development of that type of housing redevelopment?
Yeah, I mean, you want to incentivize using, areas, like I said, that are already serviced by the city, but you also want to incentivize mixed use and mixed income zoning. So we don't, I'm assuming, talking about housing, we talked about it a little bit off camera. You don't want to have areas that are exclusively high income or low income. Like, you don't want to ghettoize anything. So there are ways to do it where you incentivize, or you say, like, you need to put in X amounts of affordable rent geared to income units if you're building a subdivision, or if you're building a condo or an apartment or whatever it is. There are mechanisms with which to do that, which I think is important. And I think that there's a balance, because there's always going to be people that want to have that, like the suburban home with the lawn and for their family, whatever. That's not going to go away. We know that. But there are increasingly a lot of people, younger people, or the retirees, who don't want to have to deal with like having a lawn and clearing snow and all that kind of stuff. So there are innovative ways of building housing that we need to look at. And like I said, there's examples all over the world. And so it's good to have a mix of options and not just do one thing. Like, it doesn't need to just be apartments, and it doesn't just need to be suburban development. Like, there's a range in between, and I want to do a mix of all of it, basically.
But I guess one of the dilemmas, or one of the challenges, is you take a place like the Pig's Ear.
Yep.
Where a developer says, I'm going to buy it, and I want to turn it into a condo development. And there's huge opposition to that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I get the nostalgia for it, but at the end of the day, as a community, what's better for the community? Redeveloping an old building into housing?
Yeah.
Or maintaining a bar?
And I 100% agree. And like that issue, you have to strike a balance between tearing down heritage buildings and the Pig's Ear. I wouldn't, because the Pig's Ear was in bad condition. Yeah. So I was just like, that's fine. Put something else on it. Like the Black Horse was a different story. It's in good condition. It's a lovely building. So we're working on the heritage piece, and the official plan is going to be talking about, striking that balance between, we want to redevelop. We don't want to disincentivize people from redeveloping the downtown or around the downtown. Yeah. And so I think you're right. Like, places like that are
talking about not even destroying it. Just there's people that don't want that to change.
That don't want it to change
They
at all.
don't even want the use to change,
and
right?
And
we really need to.
Yeah, you do. And it's within the policies to do so. Mm-hmm. And I think, one of the things that in politics is that you learn, like, you're never going to make everyone happy. No. You try, but ultimately it's like, what's in the best interest of the community as a whole, And I certainly think getting more housing downtown, but we also want, like the Y development is great, but that's not affordable housing. So we want to make sure that we're also not pushing out artists and pushing out low-income people that are living downtown. So we need to do some work around that.
I'm going to end that topic there.
Let's move on.
Because we've got like 8 minutes left, and we still need to talk about PDI.
Okay.
Because PDI it's a huge issue right now.
It is.
$105 million was the sale price.
Yep.
There's a little bit of argument as to whether or not the deal has changed with Hydro One.
Well, I think your council colleague Henry Clark, he wrote a letter.
I saw that. Yeah.
He somewhat upset. I think he feels like he's been unfairly tarnished. So
I've been opposed to the deal since day one, as you guys know, and my position has been, well, if the deal has changed, and I haven't said that it has, but my position is, well, Hydro One walked away, and now they're back. And the other problem that I had with it was that council hasn't been really kept in the loop about what's going on. I tried to get questions.
Do you know why Hydro One walked away?
No, I've heard speculation from different sources that are outside of the city, like people that know more about like the electrical and the hydro sector than I do, who kind of was like, oh, I think this is what's going on. I think this is what's going on. But there was no formal update. And then we heard that they were back on, and now it's happening. And So it's just, there's been a real lack of communication because it's a public utility. As of now, the ratepayers still own it, and we deserve to know what is going on. And so if the deal has changed, and there hasn't been, I don't think there's been an argument about the deal's changed. Like I've just said, if it has, we should know about it. Mm-hmm. We should know about it anyways. What brought them back to the table? My other concern too is, as we talked about, with this new provincial government who's talked about, making changes to Hydro One, is that going to impact things? What's that going to look like? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. So seeing as that we're kind of in this period of uncertainty, to me, it doesn't really make sense to try to push things through when we don't know what everything's going to look like in 6 months.
So you're just afraid that we sell the distribution company to Hydro One, and then the Doug Ford government makes some change to Hydro One that makes so that it would be a worse deal for us.
Well, the plan was right. The original plan was for Hydro One to buy up a bunch of utilities and then be sold off to a private company. I think was the province's plan.
Yeah,
who knows if that's changed or not.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we don't really know, and because so much of it is impacted by what the provincial government is going to do, and they're just coming into power, and we don't really know exactly what is going to roll out. I think it is imperative that we wait to see what exactly is happening, because if they're going to, he wants to fire the board and the CAO and all that kind of stuff, and it's just okay, well then what are the impacts going to be for the business, and then who's coming in?
There's no layoffs.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, they're not firing anybody, right?
At PDI?
No, the province.
At the province. Oh, right, yeah. Making jobs, but maybe not firing anybody. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
But as you said, every year that you don't do something, it gets more expensive to do that. And right now we have some aging infrastructure in Peterborough that, the whole point of the deal was to get that 105 million, or I guess the city would have gotten, what was it, 65 million? 50?
No, less than that, 50 to 55.
55 million, yes.
But Hydro One would have upgraded.
That's what they said.
The distribution lines.
Yes, but as time goes on, the cost to replace and upgrade that infrastructure is getting more and more expensive.
For sure. And part of it is that should have been done on an ongoing basis in the past. It hasn't been done. But Toronto recently, they decided not to sell their utility, and they've committed millions of dollars into upgrading their infrastructure because they realize that it's a beneficial asset to have.
Do we have millions of dollars to reinvest into our infrastructure to make it to the point where...
Well, PDI makes a profit for the city, and so if that money is reinvested in that, then to me that makes sense. You can't do it all at once, but it should have been the same thing with upgrading roads or any infrastructure that we have. It's a process.
Well, when John Stevenson says that if we continue down this path that we're on now, PDI would be unsustainable. That does to me that
he never said that though, because I asked him about it, and in their reports and the consultants thing, it showed the dividend might go down a bit, but then sort of plateaus again. And to me, it's also the benefit of having local control and having our public utility remain public is invaluable.
Okay. Mike, was there anything else that you want to ask about the PDI topic?
No.
Before we move
not
on?
that.
Okay. See, I told you we would get a little bit more heated in the second half.
It's all right. It's all good.
Yeah, let's move on to our last topic then, because I want to talk about the opioid crisis, because this is an issue that it's taken people's lives, and it's definitely a Peterborough issue. It's definitely something that we're going to be tackling, over the course of the next 4 years, and hopefully not, but it's probably something we'll be tackling for the next 8 years, 12 years.
Yep.
So, what are your solutions that you would, see happen here in Peterborough to help reduce the number of opioid deaths?
Yeah, and it was interesting, as I was mentioning to you guys on the break, I was at a session that Peterborough Public Health put on this morning, and I was at a table talking about this very topic, and it was interesting to hear from their perspective what's going on. So there's a lot of great work being done in our community by agencies like PARN and Forecast and around training on naloxone and that kind of overdose prevention sort of stuff. Ultimately, I have a problem with the way that methadone clinics work, in that they're just basically a pharmacy. They're not a place for you to get actual treatments. And so it'd be great to see nurse practitioners or family health teams or whoever it is be able to help patients or help clients manage those drug issues and hopefully go through what they call a controlled withdrawal. I mean, it's all tied into, as we talked about, like poverty and mental health and all of that kind of stuff. And
so is that agencies working together to perform a program that would help people like that control withdrawal, or is that a facility that would be installed here in Peterborough?
I mean, yeah, and it was funny because I felt like we need like a facility, like a comprehensive detox center. But then I was talking to the medical officer of health a little bit this morning, and she was saying, well, that doesn't always work so much because then you're bringing people out of their surroundings into this place where they then detox, and then you put them back into their surroundings, and it's easy to fall back into that. So she was saying that that a better model of doing it is sort of having people be able to access treatment so like Parn has a program. What did she say it was called? Rapid Access Treatment Management, I think. I could be wrong. But basically, if you're struggling with a opioid or addictions issue of any kind, you can go there. You get seen by a health and a mental health professional who can then refer you to the services that you need. And so that's the kind of stuff that we need to see. I mean, ultimately, we need to address the issues around poverty and housing and all of that kind of stuff. So the basic income guarantee came up this morning too when we were talking about it, because I've heard, and I don't know for sure, but apparently the new provincial government has talked about wanting to continue on with that pilot to get some data about it, which I think is, I mean, and I've worked in poverty reduction and I've worked in these communities, so everything comes back to income. And then ultimately, like, that impacts your mental health and your housing and all of that kind of stuff. So if people have enough money to live, then certainly there still will be issues with, addictions and mental health. But then they at least are able to
solve one problem.
Yeah, it solves one problem, and they're able to look for help for the other ones.
Do you think is it a problem though that municipalities are even equipped to handle, or is this really
Yeah,
it needs provincial and federal?
It does, and they've been,
guidance.
100%. They do, and they need to put in money for it because they've, I think the I don't know about the provincial government, but the former one and the federal have talked about mental health strategy, mental health money, all these kinds of things. It's like, okay, well then give us the funding because we're the ones that are dealing with it at the municipal level.
It gets back to municipally, it's great because you can help people on a one-on-one basis in a lot of ways, but the hard part is sometimes these problems are so big that you can't solve them, but you're the one that people come to.
Yeah, and I know all of our frontline agencies deal with it. So our police deal with that. Terry Gao, the DBIA, will tell you that they deal with that, and they're doing good work on that front now with this One City program. But they get called in to deal with mental health stuff all the time, and they're not equipped as counselors or they don't have that knowledge. And so there are good programs of these agencies working together to try to deal with the problem, but they all are always looking for funding and money, and it's grant to grant sort of things. There's different programs that it's on a couple months or a couple years and then it's maybe gone. So there needs to be sustained funding from senior levels of government to help address this issue.
So we're just about to run out of time here. So I just wanted to leave you with, is there anything, messages that you want to get out there, or do you think there's anything that we missed that you wanted to share before we sign off for the night?
I'll just say I'm really excited to be running this campaign and happy to be involved in this great community. And if people want to know more, I run these neighborhood drop-ins every Tuesday and Friday, and you can check my website for more details, dianetherrien.ca. And you guys really sold me on the Peter podcast today.
I knew we'd get another plug in there. Yeah.
Listen all the time, everyone. Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for. All right. Thank you so much for coming in, Diane.
Thank you for having me.
And we look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. And to everyone else, we will see you next week.